Hi, my name is Magnolia Heaton, owner and founder of Love is Healing LLC. We specialize in the treatment of complex PTSD through mental health services and shamanic healing services. Welcome back if you've been here before, and if you haven't, welcome. All right. Today, I want to talk a little bit about some stuff that came up this week. And I think what I'm gonna call this video is how to get along with people who are different. I know that there are messages out there. If you're new to this channel, essentially what I'm wanting to do is support people in bridging gaps within themselves and with each other. And so helping to address and shift self-limiting beliefs too. And one of the things that I see in general in society is people having, of course, differing opinions. I see that there's a push for polarizing people against each other, right? And I mean, anytime something like that happens, anytime there's a push, I always invite people to ask, why is there a push, right? And I'm not going to speak on that today. It's just a question for critical thinking. Okay. I think the main reason why this is hard for people is because when people have different opinions, it tends to be offensive and things like that, right? And very opinionated. People maybe who voice their opinions the most, and those voices are really loud, and so they kind of take over, right? And so where does that even come from psychologically, right? It comes psychologically from stagnating or being stuck in a place emotionally, a younger emotional state than being an adult. And usually the part of us, if it shows up in this way, who's very kind of controlling or opinionated, closed off, that kind of thing, is a very fearful 8-year-old part of us. And that part of us tends to deal with self-esteem, competence, confidence, power, control, these kinds of issues, right? And so if we weren't afforded these opportunities in an age-appropriate way by our parents, by our teachers, our older siblings, etc., then we're still going to have that unmet need. And I think in my experience, my opinion, what the psyche does is like it kind of pushes to kind of domineer other people, right? And I would say that most people don't work on themselves. Let's be honest, most people aren't in therapy. And so because of this, most people are unaware, simply put, right? That these parts of them are unintegrated. And unintegrated parts are also dissociated parts because by definition, it's not integrated. And so it's kind of floating out in space. It's not connected to the person. And in so being, there are projections a lot of the time. There are projections a lot of the time. There are, right? And so the way that it looks is, again, offensive, verbally offensive, domineering. It could be bullying. And really what triggers people is that it offends, that it's kind of like intentionally malicious or just inconsiderate at minimum, and that it's judgmental and that there's a lack of empathy, right? I would say we all have core needs, and I'll get to that point, but in particular, I think that something that triggers people is when people don't feel heard or valued, right? I think when there's more of an openness to receive someone, to be received, there can be kind of an open dialogue. But if someone experiences like, oh, no one's going to listen to me anyway, it kind of touches on the abandonment wounds, actually. And so when that happens, the body goes fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? Okay. Man, it really is unfortunate these videos end up being longer than I liked. Well, I feel like there's probably some viewers out there who really like it short and sweet. I guess that's not my style. Some of my videos are going to be that way. Others are going to be kind of long and drawn out. Oftentimes I listen to videos or podcasts whenever I'm walking or driving or working out or something. So I like longer videos and I like people to talk to me for a long time. Because I listen to people speak rather than like music. My family, right? Growing up, I was the youngest in my family, and I grew up with 6 adults for the most part, and they were very judgmental, and there was a lot of gossip between them, among them, and then with them and other people, and then they kind of attracted other gossipy people. So I saw this stuff a lot, and they watched shows where people would gossip a lot. And there is a lot of verbal and emotional violence, in all honesty, not even gonna say abuse, because there was abuse, but like it was violent, right? And so I was blatantly aware of that. And I think I'm gonna come back and talk about this in another video more. I'll suffice it to say right now that that really gave me resolve to not be that way, right? Because I, as a young child, saw them. I didn't like their behaviors. I didn't like how they made me feel. I felt unsafe. I felt angry. I felt sad. I felt confused because, like, to me, watching them behave in these ways didn't align with their words and proclamations of love, really. But really, my family didn't even use the word love most of the time. I think they didn't start using it until I was 15. Anyway, and so that was kind of weird, right? And I didn't like that. And I just honestly saw the qualities of their relationships with themselves and with their circles. And I didn't like it. And I consciously elected not to have that for myself because I didn't want the natural consequences of having these people around me, right? These kinds of relationships. And I also just didn't want to be in another space. I have so much Libra in my chart. If you follow astrology, like I need everything to be balanced and pretty and harmonious, especially relationships. Anyway, there's that. And then, so I learned a lot through contrast, right? I learned how to get along with people who are different. The people in my family were all blatantly, drastically, radically different from myself in so many ways in their comportment, attitudes, demeanor, and habits, like everything. And I just saw with their lack of tact, their lack of empathy, their lack of everything, what I wanted to be by seeing what they were, which was what I didn't want to be. So I thought, I want to be kind and considerate. I want to be thoughtful with my responses because ouch, right? Things like this. So now to the meat of the video. How to get along with people who are different. I would say there are a few things. Maybe I'm just going to call this one number 1 because I kind of put it backwards. I'm going to call number 1 curiosity, right? And so what do I mean by that? I mean, instead of making automatic assumptions, maybe we already do. This is what biases are, right? That's fine. They keep us safe. It's fine. What we do with them is what matters, right? If I have biases and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are just so awful, and then I like say mean things to them, that's one thing. If I think they're awful and then I cut them off, or I flip them off, or I punch them, or anything like that, that's one thing. If I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are so awful, and then I'm like, gonna walk away. That's a different story, right? But I have choice in those moments. And so one thing we can do is like notice, really. I guess that would be number 1. Notice that it's happening within you. Oh, I have a strong reaction to this person. I don't like them. Why don't I like them? Makes sense. What do I want to do with this information? Do I want to lean in? Do I want to stay where I am? Do I want to move away? Right? We want to be curious, and that we want to kind of ask ourselves or even ask the person, like, what is the motivation behind the behavior, right? Maybe there's someone screaming out in the middle of the street. Okay, we could assume they have a mental illness. We could assume they're hallucinating. We could assume they're on drugs, sure. But like, maybe they're in crisis. Maybe they need help. Maybe they're trying to warn us that it's an unsafe situation and trying to get us to move away from the area. We don't know, right? So we could explore and ask curious questions. What's the motivation behind the behaviors? What's the motivation behind the statements of this person, right? And I know that this can be really challenging, especially when politics get involved, and it seems like everything is political these days. These are just choices. You don't have to be perfect. You don't even have to do this. This is just information for you. And you can take it or you cannot take it. Totally fine. Maybe you can come back at a later date. I don't know. And this is really loaded. This is a really oversimplified video. I'm just here sharing some basic points for those who want to hear it. Notice, engage curiosity, and then empathize. What does that mean? To pity somebody is to be, I think that means compassionate. It's like to feel sorry for somebody. And so like by definition, that puts you above someone else. That's not empathy. Empathy is seeing eye to eye what someone else would see, like putting yourself in their shoes, seeing things from their perspective. And so trying to see where they come from, right? Why does this person love the All Lives Matter movement? Why does this person love Blue Lives Matter? Why do they love Black Lives Matter? I don't agree with those ideologies. Gosh, they're awful, right? Okay, that's fine. That's about you. And if that's where you are, you're like, cool, I hate this. I don't want to be here. Great. Cool. There's your answer. If you're like, this is unfortunate, I don't like it, it's uncomfortable. Also, I'm forced to live with this person, to work with this person. All right, well, seems like you don't really have a choice other than to like tolerate them, right? And if that's the case, by empathizing, you could ask yourself, well, why would someone think differently from me? Like, why does all lives, Black lives, blue lives, why does that matter to me? What value do I find in that? Okay, so is it possible that that other person could feel the same way about their movement? Okay, right? Or we could even just ask the person questions. Hey, can I ask, like, I know that you're very liberal or you're very conservative. Like, can I ask you what motivates you to, I guess, vote that way or anything like that? And most people are happy to tell you where they come from, right? So their thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. Notice, be curious, and empathize. At the end of the day, the details, and this is why I don't like to focus on details. Because the details tend to not really matter. They matter to some people. I find that when we look in the details, it's so easy to get stuck in the details. The general themes are kind of what everyone tends to agree on. In my experience, professionally, personally, everybody tends to want the same things, and the choices that they make tend to fall in line with these things. I think everybody wants to be loved, to be accepted, to be happy, and to belong. Those are wants, and those are also core human needs. And if we're disconnected from them, and if someone's really guarded and things like that, that's their way of surviving. But I can tell you 99.9% of the time, 99.9% of people have those needs to be loved, to be accepted, to be happy, and to belong. If you find someone who's really guarded and really closed off, then that means that they were hurt. So much so to the point that they were in such unsafe environments that they had to protect themselves with so many hardened layers, you know? And I would hope that if I were in that situation, that someone would have empathy for me, right? And someone would go out of their way to ask me questions. Just some food for thought. Right. It's important to discern your needs in the moment, right? Of course, this is going to be dependent on like if this is a more long-term relationship, if it's a mandatory relationship, if it's a voluntary relationship, maybe you're starting to date someone and you find that they have different views. All right, well, that happens. No one's going to agree with you 100% of the time. Now, what are you going to do with those choices? Right? Are you going to stay in the relationship? Are you willing to work through it? Are you willing to get their perspective? Or maybe you've been with someone for so long and then bam, they shifted, or bam, there's a big values conflict that you just were made aware of and you had no idea. And now you're like, how do I move forward? It happens, right? Discern your needs in the moment. Do you need to be heard? Do you need to gather more information? Do you need to be validated? Do you need to hear that this person is on your side? Do you need to hear that they hear you? Do you need to know that they understand that you blatantly disagree with their choices? What do you need in that moment, right? Do you need to know that you're safe? Do you need to know that this person isn't going away or going to hate you because you have opposing points of view? Do you need to know that you're physically safe and that this person is racist and you happen to be the person that they're racist against? Okay, well, that's that situation, and then act accordingly, right? If you need to move away, then you need to move away, that kind of thing. And then I would say discern who's able to express empathy, right? So discern your needs. What do you need from that relationship? And you're not going to need the same thing. Sorry, I have to go back to this point. From everybody, because you're going to probably need more from the people in your inner circle and maybe your family, or than you would from like a coworker that you see twice a month versus like your boss versus your next door neighbor versus your next door neighbor that you see once a year versus a stranger that you just met versus the cashier at the store. I don't know. Different needs for different situations, which can be challenging sometimes because there's this push a lot of the time through messaging that we must be black and white all the time. And I don't know that that's realistic, right? There's points in time where we have to be black and white and we're going through a healing process, and that's perfectly acceptable. There's more often than not, like there is more gray area to life. And I find that when we are able to be flexible, other people are generally willing and able to be flexible with us. And then there tends to be a lot of conflict resolution and lots of healing that way, right? Because love is healing that way. Okay, and then we discern who is able to express empathy. I just said that. Why? Okay, because. Again, what does empathy mean? Being able to see eye to eye, being able to put oneself in one's shoes. So if I look at somebody and I'm like, this person is very opinionated in this moment, they're saying these things. It honestly, for me personally, it doesn't matter what they're saying. If they're just closed off, they're closed off. Even if I agree with them completely, I'm like, can they see my point of view? Can they even receive a compliment if I give it to them in the moment? If I have questions, can they answer them? Or are they just kind of repeating things that they've heard and seen like in the media? And so I'd say assess their openness, right? Are they open to your feedback? Are they open to your questions? Are they open for discussion? If they aren't, you are literally wasting your breath and you're probably gonna feed the beast, so to speak, and it's gonna create more conflict than not. And like, if you want to fight and you need to get that aggression out, that's one thing. I would encourage you to be aware of like why you need to let out that aggression and why you're picking fights. If that's not the case and you really want to be understood, fair. We all need that. If you find that these patterns keep repeating themselves wherever you go, at the grocery store, at the bar, at Walmart, at work, your next door neighbor, your spouse, your best friend, your kid, and all these people are kind of argumentative and closed off, that probably means, I'm not diagnosing, I'm saying generally speaking, that probably means that you grew up with a narcissistic household and that these patterns are repeated from us, right? And if that's the case, okay. I mean, I would invite you to go and like reevaluate your relationships in all honesty and just be like, well, what do I need? Who can I trust and why? And like, who's actually listening to me? But that's easier said than done. It's hard to lose relationships, especially if like you're losing a lot of relationships before making a bunch of new relationships. In which case you're probably really familiar with being in your fight response, and then like you're probably really familiar with what it looks like for someone to be closed off and or everybody to be closed off. And if that's the case and you need some words of encouragement to say like you're not crazy, you're not, but probably you have a lot of unprocessed trauma, and like I would advise you to go to therapy if you can, right? And shift your point of attraction, work through a lot of stuff, clear a lot of that out of your energetic field, out of your body, that kind of thing, right? And like adjust your picker that picks people to be in your life, right? And again, if you like fighting, that's valid. Just can you channel that in a way that doesn't hurt as many people, you know? Because if you're the one picking fights, that would probably tell me that no one really listened to you or valued what you had to say growing up. In which case, that's really sad. In which case, I would invite you too to like seek support from people who are validating and who do value your opinion and find healthy ways to channel it, right? There's plenty of jobs that beg for people to be really like assertive and things like that. There's ways, or you could be like a coach or something like that. I'm not sure, right? But there's avenues for that. And I'm digressing. I'm hoping that this touches someone. I wasn't expecting on these side stories, side things. Expecting to talk about these side things. Okay, but if someone is open, then great. Then there's a little in, and then you can kind of start working with that, right? There's a little openness here, a little openness there, and then there's this little dance, and then people can kind of come to agreements, resolving conflicts, general resolution, repairing ruptures in relationships and things like that. And honestly, that's the biggest thing with conflict resolution anyway, is like someone being open and empathetic. If they can see your point of view and they can be open, you can go almost anywhere if you are both in that place, right? And that's fine. You can agree to disagree. And that's fine because there's that kind of mutual respect and that empathy. Like, I completely disagree with you. Also, I understand where you're coming from. I also understand I'm not going to change your point of view and like same. And that can happen, right? And then you just strategize without the emotions involved. When we look at the openness and when we look at the empathy that someone has, then we can say, all right, cool. Does this person have the capacity to meet the need that I have in this moment? Right? Which is probably generally speaking to be heard. Maybe you need to have someone hear your point of view, or maybe you just need more information of like, why do you believe this way? Right? So discern your needs, discern if they're open, discern if they have empathy, and then discern if they can meet your needs. And then if so, then I would say, okay, these are some green flags, and it seems like it would be probably emotionally safe for you to engage this person in some kind of conflict resolution thing. And if not, then I would say no, and then figure out how you attracted that person, or what lessons there are to learn there, or what else you could do if this person is not someone that you can actually talk things through with, right? But if they're open, then they can receive you, and hopefully you'd be able to receive them too. Okay. And then if you're in a situation where safety is a concern, and you can tell someone is not open, is not empathetic, is not able to meet your needs in the moment, I would say be clear, concise, and firm. Because really, you need to speak up sometimes, right? If you're in an unsafe situation, or maybe it's not even that, but it's just like there's something going on with your boss or your coworker or supervisor or anything like that. And like, you just need to speak up sometimes. Okay. And they're definitely not going to hear you, but you need to be able to say and respect yourself and look back and be like, I said that. I spoke up for myself. I self-advocated. Great. Be clear and concise and firm. We're not going to over-explain. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're not going to be passive, things like that. I would invite you to be clear, concise, and firm, right? And that would go with boundary setting and things. I think that's all. I know that was a lot, and I know that it feels like I rambled, and I hope that it wasn't too confusing. And I want to say there's something else that I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. Really, that's the end of the video. If you want to hear a personal story, I'm going to share a personal story. There was a time where I would travel a lot, and I want to go back to that soon. And I would go on walks a lot, and I would meet a lot of people and things like that. And as I mentioned, I learned a lot from my family through contrast, and I learned who I absolutely did not want to be. As I was able to get physical distance from my family, emotional, energetic, spiritual distance from my family, and deepen into my own healing process through therapy, through prayer, spiritual healing, things like that. Coupling that together, I was able to kind of lean in and get to know people with opposite perspectives, right? I was like, you know, God, I'm ready. Send on my way. Let's figure this out. Let me understand. Help me understand where these people are coming from, because I don't get it. And then yeah, I would meet a lot of people, right, whose opinions were similar to my family's actually, but also just kind of in general where I was in life, and even still today, like who differ from my belief systems, etc., values, etc. And I would see them, and then I would see their lack of emotional maturity, right? I'm like, oh, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that you're mature. Just because you're 80 doesn't mean you're mature. Just because you're 90, just because you're 60, 55, 20, like it doesn't mean that you're mature. Conversely, just because you're 18 doesn't mean that you're immature, right? Or unintegrated. Anyway, so I would talk to people. I, it's hard to share because I want to share my opinions, but I shouldn't. And so let's just say that I liked apples, right? And they were my favorite, and I was just like 100% going home for apples. But people were like, no, oranges are better. And so fine, right? But I'm like, oh man, I love apples. They're so good. They're so delicious. Oh man. Red delicious organic apples from New York City are so good. They're so juicy. They're so big. They're so scrumptious. They're so just incomparable. They're the best apples I've ever had. And they just are so nice. And I love them. That's where I was, right? I wasn't like, I love apples and every other fruit is awful. No, I was just like, oh, I'm so in love with this experience and these values that I have and this person I become. By contrast, I would walk around in that vibration with these thoughts and things. And there were people who were like, oranges, oranges, oranges. Right? And so, and everything else is wrong, kind of thing. To which I was like, okay, well, they're really closed off and they're very opinionated, and it seems like they don't have room for any other kind of opinion. So I'm just gonna sit here eating my apple, watching them from a distance. And there were times where I would try to engage, but I'm like, yeah, okay, my intuition told me they weren't open. So like, yeah, and there you go. They just verified that. Okay, cool. And then I would learn to feel in my body what that felt like, right? When someone was closed off. And then other times I'd be, eating an apple or something, metaphorically. And there'd be other people who maybe were walking around right? Enjoying the oranges and being like, oranges are so good and they're so juicy and we love vitamin C and organic produce and things like that, right? And that's a different vibe, right? They're over here living on oranges and I'm over here living on apples. And I'm like, that's cool, right? Of course, I love oranges too. But like, for this example, maybe let's say that I didn't like oranges. Let's say I didn't like oranges. And then I was like, I would maybe go up to the person and be like, hey, I noticed that you really love oranges. That is so cool. What do you love about them? Okay, cool. And like learn their points of view, right? And that was pretty cool. There are other times where maybe like I'd start the conversation that way, and then I'd be like, that's really cool. You know, I've never tried oranges. I've been reluctant for these reasons, right? I know there's these like rumors or myths or biases that people have around oranges. How do you deal with that? Or like, can you tell me more about that? Or are they true? That kind of thing. Yeah. Or, you know, I've never liked oranges, but can you tell me what you love about them? Or something like that. And most people will tell you, you know. And you can kind of tell too if someone's grounded, they'll be like, yeah, oranges, this and that, whatever. And they'll know, and there'll be more substance to that argument, that info sharing session. There will also be kind of more of a grounded sense around that person, more complexity versus like somebody who's just kind of repeating things or doesn't really know, which is more likely to be someone who's like, oranges, oranges, oranges. You'll just kind of feel it. You feel it in their energy, or something will feel off, or something will feel disingenuous, or something, or they'll feel kind of dissociated, right? And that happens, right? I've been on both sides, on the orange side and the apple side, on the high side, the high vibe side, and on the dissociated side, in all honesty. So I hope that was valuable. I think that the more we have empathy for ourselves, I know the more we have empathy for ourselves, the more we can have empathy for other people. The more that we can all have empathy for one another, which doesn't mean I agree with you. It doesn't mean I agree with you 100%. It doesn't mean I agree with you even a little bit. It just means that makes sense. Period. Could also mean that makes sense. And if I were in your shoes, if I grew up that way, if I were whatever color you are, if I spoke whatever languages you do, if my family came from whatever country your family came from, I would probably feel the same way. If I went to the same university, same high school, whatever, like I probably have the same beliefs as you, which in all honesty is probably the case, right? Environment has a really big influence on who we become. The more that we do that, the more honestly peace of mind that we have. If nothing else, if you do this, like what will you gain? Why should you even, right? Peace of mind. Probably you'll probably gain some peace of mind, because in doing this, in cultivating openness within yourself, you're gonna find it naturally with other people, because you're gonna vibe with other people. You're gonna be like, apples, right? You're gonna be in that vibe. And like at that point, like you tend to be pretty untouchable. But if you're like, oh, those oranges, oh, then guess what? Then you're connecting with that angry energy. You're like, oh, those oranges, and they're like, yeah, oranges are better. What? You like apples? And I mean, yeah, you'll have more harmonious relationships, more opportunities to explore, I don't know, different things. But like, can you imagine? And I've seen this in my own life, and this tends to be the people that flock toward me and surround me, thankfully, etc. Like, what would happen if the people around you were open? And regardless of y'all's views, they just respected you and loved you, right? Or just in general, what if like you walked around in a world, in a community, whatever, where people just had an inherent respect for each other. I'm a social worker by trade, and we believe in the dignity and worth of people. We are of service to people. And I wish I would have taken notes on it. I don't have that. I didn't think I'd talk about this. But like, yeah. I really like those values because it makes me feel like we're kind of here to support the human race and being human, right? I'm not going to say that that's what happens in practice. I'm not going to say that there aren't people who are really divisive, because there are. And unfortunately, I see that more often than not, right? Which again, if that's the case, and if people are closed off, then I just know that that's a lack of integrated trauma, a lack of integration in general, and dissociation and projection. That's unhealed parts of themselves. It's emotions that need to be worked through, and they're not able to like sit with them and process them, etc. So they're being projected toward other people, right? And it happens. Yeah, that was a downer. Even though it was meant to be uplifting. If you made it this far in the video, please let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know if you liked it, and if you liked the longer video, what did you like about it, right? Yeah, I'm sorry it took so long to upload a video too. There's this video that I recorded when I was at the gym, and it was like 3 separate videos, and I can't figure out how to stitch them together to upload them, unfortunately. So that's why it's been such a lag. Right, y'all? Thanks for watching. If you want any more information, please feel free to go to loveishealingllc.com. We are also on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, clearly. Love is Healing LLC. If you're interested in services or just want more information, we're going to be doing trainings here soon. We just got some CEU provider certification, which is pretty great. Things like that. And yeah, I mean, support our channel if you feel like it's useful. Right now it's only me, but here we're in the middle of a big expansion, and we're going to have a lot of people come onto our team, and we're going to have other content creators too. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Like, share, subscribe, comment, please. Thank you.